In the winter of 1968, a small band of hippie misfits began moving supplies from their compound on the outskirts of Los Angeles to a desolate ranch deep in the heart of Death Valley at the direction of their maniacal leader, an ex-con who had become convinced of an imminent race war between blacks and whites, and that he and his followers' only chance of survival was to locate and hide out in a bottomless pit in the middle of the desert and await the end of the war. They had all manners of survivalist gear, dune buggies they'd converted from stolen Volkswagen Bugs, knives, guns, radio communication devices, surveillance equipment, food rations, even a fuel tank that they had taken out of the wing of a commercial airplane.
Going down the bumpy road here to the Ballarat Barker Ranch. Here we are, we're in an old Dodge Power Wagon. And this Dodge Power Wagon was stolen. Yes, it was stolen. Oh, no, not stolen. Yes, they needed parts for their old Dodge Power Wagon. So they stole this one from the Inyo County Furniture Company.
They stashed their supplies in and around Golar Canyon, and more specifically the mining camps of Barker and Meyers Ranches, accessible via the Golar Wash, a virtually impassable route up the mountains from the Panamint Valley down below, formed over years and years of extreme weather conditions in an area 282 feet below sea level. Over the next few months, law enforcement in and around Inyo County, including the California Highway Patrol and Inyo County Sheriff's Office, began taking notice of the ragged, disheveled hippies that seemed so out of place in the otherwise conservative and straight-laced towns they patrolled. In March of 1969, a gold prospector from New Mexico named Paul Crockett and his business associate Bob Berry took up residence at Barker Ranch, which they intended to use as their base of operations for mining expeditions in and around Golar Canyon. There, they met the only remaining members of the commune, a young man and woman still in their teens who'd been left behind by the group to keep an eye on the place. By day, Crockett and his partner would hike up into the nearby mountains and look for ore. At night, they'd sit and talk with the teenagers, who told them of their crazed leader, the impending apocalypse, and the underground city that they'd accessed through a bottomless pit in the desert they'd yet to find. Crockett, a student of spirituality himself, helped the teens come to realize that everything they'd been told was a lie, that they'd been exploited, and had given up their own identities for someone who didn't have their best interests in mind. The leader of the hippie gang, now back in Los Angeles with the rest of his followers, soon learned of the desert rat who was turning his people against him, and set about taking corrective action.
When Paul Crockett discovered that Manson was coming, he put up a force field around the place with the intention that no one can come through there unless they do it in love. And so by the time Charlie did get there, he was having a tough time getting through that barrier. And somehow he made it through, and then he was complaining about how hard it was to get in there.
The gang arrived back in Death Valley in September of 1969. And their leader, Charles Manson, started a campaign to win back the followers who had abandoned him for Crockett, all the while plotting his evasion of justice by mounting a Rommel-style military campaign around the desert, with hideouts, bunkers, and dune buggies.
They had field lines, field phones for World War II strung all over the area here. To this bunker, to the Barker Ranch, to that bunker, all World War II stuff.
Meanwhile, law enforcement was closing in on the group, and with the assistance of Crockett, apprehended all members and detained them in a jail in nearby Independence.
He has programmed all of his people to the extent that they're just like him. He has put all kind of things in their head. I didn't believe it could be done, but he's done it. And I see it working.
Only later would these law enforcement officers learn that this band of roving gypsies were the perpetrators of one of the most sensational murder sprees in U.S. history, the by now infamous Tate LaBianca slayings, which had been committed a few months earlier in Los Angeles. Crockett and the members of the Manson family he deprogrammed settled down in the town of Shoshone, where they formed a rock band and achieved modest success before disbanding and settling in disparate places around the United States. As for the band of hippies and their crazed leader, well, you know what became of them, and the rest is history.